It's time to learn about bad practices in programming, how we can identify if what we are doing is a bad practice or a good practice using the code we had developed in the previous episode. Hello everyone, this is Ali Reza. Welcome to the Mentor Code Lab. Before we dive into what was wrong and what was correct, let me tell you this. I was aware that my code was terrible. Then why did I teach it to you? Because first of all, I wanted to have some concept that I can talk to you in this video about. And second, when I was writing my roadmap, I was debating to put the command much later in the process. However, I knew that when you are using OR generation, there is a problem, and that is you don't see the distribution there. And I thought to myself, okay, let's do a bad example and then tell the people that this was bad and why it is bad and how we can identify a bad code and how we can prevent being a bad programmer and be aware of pitfalls when it comes to implementing our ideas. And that is why I pushed the command tutorial in front of many other necessities and gave you a bad example. Whatever you had seen in previous episode about this section of code under the execute is a really bad practice. Of course, you need to have this return one, but anything above it is a bad practice on how you can implement your idea. I'm emphasizing this because some people reminded me that I have to be precise about these sort of conditions, and they are right. I was assuming that my followers would watch from video number one toward the end of the series, but I was not aware that someone may search the command name inside YouTube search box and just watch this single video. So that's that. Be aware what we did was wrong. Now, why it is wrong and what was the correct way of doing it and what was the best way of doing it. To understand what was wrong, we need to come down and see what we are doing here. We are running a fill command. Now, if you want to, you can go back and look into the vanilla code, find the fill command and what it is doing, and you will see that during the fill command, Minecraft itself is running loops. Now, think about what we are doing here. We are running a for loop ourselves and then telling Minecraft to run at least two more loops, one from minus x to positive x, whatever we are giving it, and another for the z, and the third one for the y. So three internal loops are happening here, and then one loop here. So this will cause four loops. However, this is three loops finished. Again, another three loops, another three loops, another three loops. Now, here is a fact. If I want to write this code myself, I still have to write those four loops. For example, I have to say for int x equals to min x. X is smaller or equal to, I don't know, min x here and x plus plus. Then another for loop here. Why are you arguing? I know it has empty body. Okay, another for loop here, and this is y, and y. Now y goes from minus 64 to the 128, and then another loop for z, that is min z to max z here, and z plus plus, and move this y loop inside that loop. However, this is what Minecraft will do. When I look at my code, I say, okay, this external loop is not necessary. Basically, when I'm using the fill command, I'm forcing Minecraft to do something stupid. I am forcing Minecraft to have an extra meaningless loop. This is called extra header traffic. Basically, you are telling the CPU, GPU, whatever who is responsible to run your code to do something that is not necessary. In this scenario, it is not that obvious, but when we come down and take a look at this line of code, it becomes much more obvious. Think about what we are doing. We are running a loop for the height, and then we are telling Minecraft to do another loop for x, z, and height again. So we are looping extra time on the height, and we are looping for blocks. Now, this looping for blocks is inevitable unless we have a method to look into a list and have something like list.find or contains, like generics in C Sharp. We will take a look at that later. However, there is an extra loop for height hidden inside this fill command. Also, don't forget, when we are running fill command, we are not just looping through some variables and doing things. In the back end, we are sending extra header traffic to handling a command in Minecraft. Basically, instead of this way of coding, the proper way would be to sit back and figure some loops that would be really smart and handle everything ourselves within 3 or 4 loops. One loop for the blocks, that's inevitable for sure. Then 3 loops for x, y, and z dimension and get done with it. And don't use commands whatsoever. This is the bad practice part. Also, another problem. Because I was using the command, I was forced to use thread.sleep. This is another bad example. It's a terrible example, I'm telling you. Why should I make Minecraft thread to sleep? Although the player is running around and you would think that, okay, game is not frozen. However, in reality, I'm stopping the game time and time over and over. In a single player, it's not obvious. On a server player, it will become terrible. Also, you should never ever force Minecraft to sleep on the thread by your mod because you may interfere with dozens of mods that are running on a server. Never ever use thread.sleep. That's another bad practice there. However, why did I show you this in particular? Because first of all, in the next video, when we are debugging our OR generation problem, at the end of the video, you will see that this command will be dedicated, limited to the development environment. So there is no server gameplay with 10 players and people will not see this problem. And also, I did want to give you something that works so that we can look at the distribution of the word gen and find any problems there. And also, I did want to mention that we have to talk about bad practices against good practices. Let's finish and wrap things up about this command. We have terrible code here. It was intentional, but it's terrible. And we have very, very problematic code here. And now we can talk about another problem that we had with this code, and that was tons of message feedbacks that would send in chat. That is manageable using game rules. Now here I'm retrieving the send command feedback rule, caching it in a variable, then executing another bad practice of commands using game rule set command feedback to false. So I'm turning off the feedback. That's a terrible thing to do. That's a hacky way of doing things, but I'm doing it here. And when I'm done sending all the commands, remember that we cached the rule, we are setting it back. And again, another terrible hacky way of turning on the feedback. We had done it so that we get rid of one problem, but instead we had to use hacky way and terrible code to do that. Okay, now, why did I say that there is a better way of doing it? And why did I debate to put the command tutorial way out there in the list? Because in few weeks later, you will learn about block states. And when you learn about block state, you will understand that the correct way of changing blocks in the word is by using word.setBlockState. Doing few loops, it would let us to move block after block clean everything. However, that causes another problem, and the problem is it will freeze the game. Although we are already freezing the game, but the player or the one that is running the command wouldn't understand it, wouldn't see it visually. Doing the loops will cause a freezing in the game. Well, let's stop right there and talk about it. If your command is a dedicated tool in your development chain to test something, a frozen game is acceptable. I don't agree with anyone who says otherwise because a developer has a purpose on running a command. His purpose is to see what is happening in the word generation. It doesn't matter if he has to sit back and wait for 1 or 2 seconds. That's acceptable. If you are familiar with game development process in general, then you would know that there are times that things will become much slower than this in industry for the developers. For example, importing something into the scene of a game can take over than 5 minutes, and the developer has no choice other than sitting on the chair, drinking a coffee, and watching the monitor for 5 minutes with a circle running there telling how much more he has to wait just to import an asset into something like Unity 3D, for example. For development environment being slow and having some intentional freezing moments into the process is totally acceptable. Anyone who is saying anything other than that has no real experience with big game development projects. That is one thing. But if you had to give this option to non developers, for example, game data pack developers, I don't know, even players, a freezing game is not acceptable at all in that scenario. Talking about bad practices comes to asking one question first. Who is the target user of this feature? If it is the developer himself, well, there are some giveaways and we can close our eyes on so many things just because the developer can accept many different problems just to see the result, precisely when those problematic features will not leak into the final project so that the users could come face to face with it and experience it. But if the answer is the users and game players, you should make sure that your code has no bad practicing problematic features in it. For example, like this thread.sleep or using fill command. Well, there are times that you may want to use a command inside your code, and this is actually these 2 lines of code are more than enough to do that. The reason we had to use the thread.sleep is because we were running them inside for loops. Even if I remove this thread.sleep at the end, it will still work, but I just put it there to make sure that it is handling things correctly. So if you want to run a command from your code, just sit back and think if it is any other way to do that. Maybe you don't want to send a command because command has some boilerplate headers as a traffic that server needs to handle and you may not need it. But if there is no other way other than that, then so be it. But before implementing it, just go into the chat rooms of Fabric and ask people, hey, I want this feature and I thought about running this command inside my code. Is there any other way or not? Communicate with people, make sure that the only way of achieving your goal is running that command and then implement it. There is no problem there. However, if people told you that there are better ways, sit back and rethink your programming process. Also, another question that you should ask yourself when it comes to bad practicing vs good practicing is that, am I reinventing the wheel? There is this interesting mod on Modrin, and the goal of the mod is exactly stripping away the train to view underground word generation. Interestingly enough, he is doing it in such a way that there is no longer a freezing in the word tree. So if this mod is out there, why should I write it myself? I can just download it, come here, open the run project, mods, open it in Explorer, put the downloaded mod here, and it will run like any other mod inside your gameplay. However, remember, you can't take a look at the code of this mod because it is obfuscated. So you can't manipulate it, you can't communicate with it, but you can play against it. So I can just download it, put it inside the mods folder, run the game, and utilize it. So why should I sit back and run this whole thing? Well, here is something to think about it. People sometimes drop maintaining their mod, or they get busy and their mod won't come out in time. For example, right now 1.21.1 is the final version of Minecraft, and the change between 1.21 and 1.21.1 is really small. It's just a minor code change that fixes a big bug in Minecraft itself. However, the mods are easily compatible. You just may need to compile it against 21.1, or if you had written your JSON for the mod on Fabric Mod JSON, then you don't need to change anything and the game will handle your mod. Problem is that this mod didn't follow the correct way of handling subversions in their development. And I know it because I downloaded it, put it inside my mod running folder, and on game run, I get the problem and error that says, hey, this is not compatible with your game version. Downgrade your game version to 1.21. Basically, he is strictly limits his mod to very dedicated version. So I opened an issue on GitHub and asked him, hey, this is the problem, please fix it. But we don't know when he will answer or even if he will answer or not. He may just updated his mod and he thinks everything is working and he's not paying attention to anything because he's not playing Minecraft. Believe it or not, we have people like this inside the community. Their goal, their aim is to just develop the mod, put it on Modrinth, and have a little bit of sideway revenue for the money income, helping them in life. They are not playing Minecraft. They are not following the gameplay of Minecraft. Every now and then, maybe every month, every 2 months, they just come and pay attention that, hey, is there a new version of Minecraft or not? And if there is a new version, they may want to update it. Some people may not believe it, but I know some ones that are just like that. Or they were game players, but something happened in real life and they are busy now and they are not playing, but they are maintaining their mod. Anyway, the chances are that a mod has the potential to sit on a version and not updating itself. What then? First option is that you download their repository and try to compile an unofficial version that is for personal use. You don't have permission to upload it anywhere. You can just use it on your own program and on your own PC. That's doable. It's time consuming, but that's doable. The second option is to find the developer and talk to him and convince him to upgrade his mod. Normally, developers don't like this approach. If you approach them for this, you can see harsh responses. And the third option is to close our eye on that already existing mod and try to implement something ourselves. Not updating his mod, but implementing something ourselves. Now, should we do the third option or not? The second option, talking to the developer, is so-so. You may want to do it, you may not want to do it. It depends on the developer, it depends on your tone in your speaking, and there are many playing factors there. The first option, just to wait, well, maybe you want to do that. The third option, doing your own coding and reinventing the wheel. It totally depends. How complex is the thing that you want? Is it a necessity or not? Can you ignore the feature? And there are many other questions like this that you should answer. For example, in our case, we want a tool for a developer and not the game player. It looks like it's a necessity in the development tool chain because it will show you the word generation under the ground. It's a very big playing factor in balancing the game. So you may want to implement something. Now, it's coming back to the first part of the video. Don't do it in a wrong way. Please find a way to make it properly. Now, you may ask, hey, how bad is the code for this mod? Can we update it for ourselves at least, an unofficial update on our own PC to use it? Thankfully, it's open source. Thankfully, it's MIT licensed, so you can do whatever you want with his license. Just don't be a bad guy and don't redistribute it. However, here is the problem. When you open his project in IntelliJ IDEA, you see something like this. Common Fabric Forge NeoForge. This is another very bad practice. And unfortunately, I had seen many people doing it. They dissect some part of their mod as common, and then they try to support more than one mod loader inside the same project, and at the end they build the Gradle in such a way that when they run the build.gradle, they get three final results, one for Fabric, one for Forge, one for NeoForge. And this is a terrible way of doing it. And when I open the build.gradle, I see this section required for NeoGradle, Forge Maven, Forge sections in repositories, and things are getting more and more complex because if you look at process resources, he's processing the Forge version, NeoForge version, Fabric version, and when you go into soft projects, you have much more problem. So here is a question. If I want to make it a Fabric only project, how should I do it? That is something that we will learn later, much later, near the end of the roadmap, when we are talking about dissecting someone else's mod to learn from it or utilize it or use it on our own local machine without redistributing anything out. Right now, at this stage, using the word stripper for our mod in 1.21.1 is out of the question unless the main developer updates his mod himself. Reinventing the wheel or upgrading his mod, dissecting his mod, we have three options here. We can try to update his mod, and if we have a problem with NeoForge, well, we can go into NeoForge rooms and we have a challenge there to convince them that, hey, we need to somehow have a copy of someone else's code in our machine and please try help us. What is the problem here? They may help. The second option is to dissect his mod and rebuild it on a local machine. We can use it for sure. The third option is to reinvent the wheel. Now, if we want to reinvent the whole thing that he had done, because his mod has a very big feature, no freezing in the game. If we want that, we have to sit back and look into the whole source code for the Fabric and Common. And let's take a look at the Common. We see networking, services, commands, and some more things. Client side, key mapping, key binding registry, lots of things that you didn't learn yet. So if we want to work with our limited amount of knowledge, yes, there is no other way to do a bad practice and try something that we understand yet. Of course, if we learn about block states in few videos later, we will come back and fix this terrible code. Yes, it will cause freezing in the game, but that's acceptable for a developer tool chain. So keep that in mind. Now I can get rid of these three to-dos that I had here. And I hope that those people who were angry of me teaching this and thinking that, hey, people who are following your video tutorial blindly think that this is a good practice are happy now because I clearly tell you that be patient. One last thing. I am not one of those guys that just show you the correct way of programming. You know that lots of people who follow video tutorials never can do something themselves. The reason is that they can't think out of the box. They learn to think just limited to what the video said. So they have to learn, and that's a very long process. They have to learn to think out of the box. And when you think out of the box, you open the door willingly to bad practices. That's inevitable. That's the journey of every programmer out there. Whoever said that they didn't have these moments, they are lying to you. They derped, they did bad practices, people yelled at them, and they learned by experience. There is no shortcut there. So, what I'm trying to do here is not just giving you the good way of doing things, the correct way. I'm trying to teach you to think out of the box and take your hand and walk you through the journey of a real programmer doing bad stuff, doing wrong stuff, having terrible bugs. Yes, I knew that my OR was not generating because I tried my code before recording and I saw the problem and I did debug because when you see one video, there are at least 8 videos that are recorded, are editing, and are uploading on YouTube, waiting to be published in future weeks. So, of course, I knew the problem and I knew where the problem was, but I didn't talk about it in the command generation video because that's not the place for it. Because I want to take your hand and move you toward this journey, having bad practices, having wrong code, having bugs, having errors. And I want to teach you how to think as a real programmer out of the box, inside the box, how to bind these two and connect these two and be a real developer that can do great things for the community. Whoever don't like this approach, well, there are other people out there that are making video tutorials about Fabric, about Forge, about Minecraft, and they don't talk as much as I talk. They wrap things up in 10-minute videos and they are repeating the same thing over and over and over for different versions of Minecraft. You can go and watch them if you want to. But if you follow this channel, that's how I teach you. I give you errors, I give you problems, we will solve them with each other. We will learn as a real toddler in programming who will fall on his butt on the hard floor, rise up, and walk again. I hope you enjoyed this journey with me. Now, if you like this approach, don't forget I have a donation system using cryptocurrency. Any amount of crypto you donate will help me, will free some of my time to put on these videos and make better content for you. If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on that bell so that when I publish a new video, you will get informed. Have fun, everyone. Bye.